Hey, welcome back on my channel and I hope you are all doing well. What's the best camera for you? What's the best mirrorless camera for landscape photography? For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Andrea Olivieri, and in today's video I'm going to talk about the Fujifilm X-T4. If you have landed on this video, it's likely you know this camera, right? There are so many technical reviews on YouTube, some very nice actually, and another millions of an unboxing video. So for this video, what do you think about a more informal and relaxed conversation on why you should or shouldn't choose the X-T4 over the X-T3 or the X-T30 as a landscape photographer? Just sit back, grab something to drink and get ready. I frequently receive messages from fellow photographers who ask me what's the best Fujifilm camera to buy, and for me, this question doesn't even make sense, totally. Some of them are confused about what camera to buy, the X-T4 versus the X-T3, the X-T3 versus the X-T30. In this video, I'll try to help you to make the right decision. I'm gonna focus specifically on landscape photography, but most of my suggestions can be applied to other genres. The basic principles are very similar. I want to clarify that I'm not here to sell a product rather than another. I just want to share my philosophy about gear. What, in my opinion, really matters to keep the focus on what's really important: photography. Okay, let's take a look at these three beautiful cameras next to each other, and let's see what we are going to see in this video. The first one, body and ergonomics, buttons, dials, layout, connectors, battery, stabilization, AF performance, image quality, video features, and the last one, what's the best for you? Okay? I don't want to spend too much time listing every small difference in size and dimensions, or at least the precise millimeters. You can find all the exact and super detailed spec numbers on the Fujifilm's website. The X-T4 and the X-T3 are very similar. The X-T4 is just slightly bigger. The main differences are internal, so what does it mean in terms of ergonomics, usability, and the feeling in my hands? This is something I'm more interested in than the spec numbers, because my hands are quite big. Without any doubt, the best feeling is with the X-T4, which has a bit more generous grip. However, the X-T3 is also excellent in this respect, and the X-T30 as well, even though it's way smaller than the others, with a less generous grip to hold the camera. By and large, the grip fits well in my hands and it does the job. I used to install on my cameras the L brackets to be more efficient on the field, to swap the camera from landscape to portrait orientation quickly. The third-party model I use for the X-T4 is with the hand grip, which works very well for me, but not everyone likes it, so it's easily removable by unscrewing these two metal screws. And for instance, I removed it from my X-T30 to leave more room for my hand. The X-T4 and the X-T3, when used with heavy lenses like the 16-55 or the 50-140, are perfectly balanced. With the X-T30, using both the lenses handheld, the experience is less enjoyable. The 16-80 or the 55-200 are more suitable for the X-T30 for a handheld use. They are lighter and more compact. The X-T4 has a new and more video-friendly fully articulated rear screen, rather than the two-direction hinged screen on the X-T3 and just one direction on the X-T30. I absolutely love the X-T3's screen for both waist-level shooting and portrait orientation shots. For horizontal shooting and video, the new vari-angle screens doesn't offer much advantage over a tilted screen as used by the X-T3. But it comes into its own for vertical shots and generally when shooting in tight corners at awkward angles. Anyway, the T4's fold-out fully articulated screen is still a plus point in some way. However, be aware that if you use an L bracket, it simply doesn't work extremely well. It's quite annoying for photographers like me who use the L bracket. Moreover, this is not a deal breaker. For my YouTube productions, the articulated LCD screen would be super convenient as a reference small monitor to check the correct framing or other stuff, but if I want to monitor the video with a second monitor via the HDMI connection, plus use the remote cable to start and stop the video recording easily, and to connect an external microphone as well. All this stuff make it difficult to use, if not impossible. Despite the different mechanisms, there are some differences about the LCD monitors and the EVFs. The X-T4 has the highest resolution of 1.62 million dots, whereas the X-T3 and the X-T30 have the same resolution. The X-T4's EVF is exactly the same as the X-T3 with a 0.5-inch viewfinder, 3.69 million dots OLED color, while the X-T30 features a lower resolution of 0.39-inch, 2.36 million dots. To be honest, for me, it doesn't make a huge difference for my photography. On the field, the transition on the use between each camera is very, very smooth. There are a couple of other small things that annoy me. This recess, this rounded edge on the top, which makes it a bit more difficult to click the buttons. I suppose it was necessary to make room for the IBIS mechanism. The second one is these cheap, floppy and not well-engineered doors. I really can't understand why Fuji decided to change the previous excellent door that we find on the X-T3 and the X-T30 with this plastic stuff. I'm quite disappointed about that, actually. Definitely a step back. This is an interesting and sometimes confusing topic. What does weather sealing mean? Basically, it means that the camera can take splashes of water. It does not mean that the camera can be submerged for any length of time. Well, every camera manufacturer claims some level of weather resistant for at least some of their models, but saying that a camera is weather resistant doesn't really mean anything, because there is no standards for evaluating such claims. For one manufacturer's weather resistance might mean that a camera can handle a light mist for 5 minutes, while for another one, the similar claim might mean that it could withstand half an hour of a heavy downpour. There are no general written or fixed rules. To be honest, I much prefer to have a greater security using a weather-sealed camera like the X-T4 or the X-T3, but even though the X-T30 is not declared as a weather-sealed camera, I've never had any problem with it during my photography session and workshops, even in terms of internal condensation. If it starts to rain really strongly, I used to use a shower cap to protect the camera. Extremely easy and super cheap. Moreover, I've used all three cameras to extremely low temperatures till minus 26 Celsius degrees, and I've always been impressed by how well they perform. Really, really amazing cameras. Alright, let's move on the buttons and dials. On the X-T4, the most important change is that now stills and video have a separate menu depending on the position of the stills video switch. Before the X-T4, the other X-series cameras like the X-T3, the older X-T2 or the X-T30 use the movie function on the drive dial. This makes it much easier to access than it was on the X-T3, where you need to precisely rotate the drive mode controlled by multiple positions to move to and from movie shooting mode. However, the physical metering mode control has been removed. Along with a dedicated control for switching between stills and video modes, the X-T4 features separate menus for the two modes. The ability to switch between the still and the video mode without having to adjust all the settings time after time is absolutely wonderful and time-saving. Fujifilm has also introduced a movie-optimized control option that allows you to adjust exposure with the command dial or the touchscreen. Note that the X-T3 and the X-T30 have a similar setting called Movie Silent Control that allows you to control all the settings via the touchscreen. There are other small differences between the new X-T4 and the X-T3. The rear dial between the AF on and the Q button has been made more prominent, extending further from the back of the camera to make it easier to operate. Then, as you already saw, the Q button position has been reversed with the AF L button. On the X-T30, the Q button is not in a practical position, I have to say. The location of this button is probably the most frustrating feature on the entire camera. It's quite impossible to not unintentionally press it and activate the quick menu. Luckily, with the latest firmware release, Fuji added the ability to deactivate the Q button. Another one of the nice things about the Fujifilm camera is that you can change what function is assigned to a button by holding the disc back button down for a few seconds or via the regular main menu. Fujifilm removed the 4-way controller from the X-T30 and replaced it with directional swipes of the touchscreen. On the X-T4, Fujifilm added another handy menu function that keeps the self-timer setting saved even when you switch off and on the camera again. The X-T4 has many function buttons that I use to customize entirely based on my way of working. To that, you can add 4 touch functions on the LCD screen. Swipe left, right, up and down. Where possible, I apply the same settings on all 3 cameras. Concerning physical connection, the X-T4 has a 3.5mm microphone input, a micro HDMI output, a USB Type-C port, a 2.5mm remote input, a flash sync port in the front. Fujifilm almost completely revisited the connectors and their placement on the camera. You will find all of them on the left side of the X-T4, whereas the 2.5mm remote input is on the right side of the X-T3. On the X-T4, the 3.5mm headphone output is completely gone, but you can use a USB-C adapter instead, included in the box. Another component to lose or forget. It seems that Fujifilm is adopting this solution more and more after first introducing it on the X-T30. This means, however, that you can't use any other accessory connected to the USB port at the same time, like a power bank, for example, unless you can find a 2-in-1 adapter. In my opinion, the omission of a headphone socket for audio monitoring is a change that I can't really understand and that slightly undermines the X-T4's credential as a video camera. Like the older X-T2, a headphone socket is provided on the optional VG X-T4 battery grip. As I said, on the X-T4, Fuji also changed the position of the remote release connector. And on the X-T2 and the X-T30 it was on the same side as all the other terminals, but unfortunately where most of the landscape photography used to place the L bracket. So it's quite difficult, sometimes impossible, to connect the cable release when the camera is placed in portrait mode. With the X-T3, Fuji made a huge improvement, moving this input on the other side, solving completely the problem. Now, with the X-T4, they put it again on the old position. What the heck? Both cameras can be tethered via USB or used as a webcam after installing the Fujifilm's X webcam software. I've used the X-T4 a few times for this purpose and it works quite well, especially now that the version 2 of the software allows you to control a few parameters from your computer. You can choose the video resolution output and the quality is not really top-notch, but it works fine for basic streaming applications. The X-T30 is not compatible with the Fujifilm X webcam software, but you can check on the Fujifilm website to know which cameras are compatible. I put the direct link in the description below. On the X-T4, the card slots have been completely rearranged so that they are vertically stacked up the side of the camera, meaning you can remove a card while recording without the risk of accidentally ejecting the active card, as could happen with the X-T3's overlapping slots. The door to the memory card slot is now removable. I'm not entirely sure why you would want the memory card slots exposed, but it's an option. The X-T30 has just one SD card slot, so you haven't a second SD as a backup, which for me is really important and it's an invaluable feature for pro photographers who don't want to get any risk of losing their images in the event of a corrupted memory card. The X-T4, like the X-T3, lets you configure how its 2 slots are used with separate options for stills and video. In movie mode, you can shoot sequentially to one card then to the other, or both simultaneously to provide redundancy. You can set the camera up to shoot movies to one card and stills to the other, but if either cards fill up, it will start recording everything to the card that still has space remaining. Last but not least, all three cameras have a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity, which allows you to do the usual things such as remote control, geotagging, or transfer JPEG images on your phone. The interaction between the camera and the smartphone continues to be inconsistent. Sometimes it won't connect, sometimes it drops the connection and doesn't reconnect right away. There is a room for improvement. With the X-T4, Fujifilm introduced the new battery NPW235 model that offers up to 500 shots on charge in normal mode and 600 in economy mode. It's not quite up to the DSLR standards, but it's more than welcome and a big improvement over the 390 shot battery life of the X-T3 and X-T30. Even though the X-T4 is now compatible with a higher power USB PD charger for fast charging, it doesn't come with an external charger. And because I love to shoot both stills and video, I much prefer to bring with me always at least 3 spare batteries. So I had to buy the optional BCW235 dual charger, which is quite expensive, but it's very good. It's small and portable, so it doesn't intrude on your backpack. And then, come on, charging the battery, connecting the camera with a USB cable to the wall charger like a phone. Guys, I'm gonna tell you the main reason why I absolutely prefer to charge the batteries on a proper battery charger. Keep in mind, the USB-C port sends the charge across the main board, and if there is a power surge or if there is an issue with your adapter, then what that will do is it will cause damage to the main board. And the main board means your camera, right? So never charge across the main board, never do that. So no, for me, it doesn't look practical and it's pretty risky. With the X-T30 it's the same. Fuji doesn't provide the external charger, so I use a third-party double battery charger for the traditional NPW 126S batteries. Especially with the new batteries for the X-T4, my suggestion is to invest in a good 60 watts charger, which helps you to charge 2 batteries in a breeze. With a low wattage charger, the charge could last forever. The performance in terms of battery life at low temperatures for the X-T4 are excellent. Also, the X-T3 and the X-T30 with the old version batteries performed quite well. I took all 3 cameras in the mountains in the winter with low temperatures around -23, 26, and I didn't have any problem at all. For the X-T4 I'm also testing a couple of third-party batteries from Backstar Pro, which are really good in terms of performance and super reliable both for video and stills. The really big news in the X-T4 is the 5-axis in-body image stabilization. And that's the biggest difference between the X-T4 and the X-T3 and the X-T30, of course. On paper, it provides up to 6.5 EV or stops of stabilization when used with one of the Fujifilm's stabilized lenses. This includes 18 out of the Fujifilm's total of 29 lenses, and it's particularly exciting if you own lenses like the 1655, which is an amazing lens, but it's not stabilized. I put in the description below the link to the Fujifilm website with the lenses list. In addition, there is a Boost IS mode, which can be applied on top of whichever IS mode you are using, and tells the camera that you are trying to lock off your shot, meaning it provides its maximum possible correction against all movement. For the X-T3 and the X-T30, they have no in-body stabilization, so you need a stabilized lens. Here are a couple of images I captured with the X-T4 and the 5140 without and with the IBIS activated. From a video perspective, the IBIS is not a gimbal replacement. A good gimbal is definitely unbeatable for capturing professional motor video footage. Just with the IBIS, when handhold panning or sliding, the results are a bit jerky, even with the latest firmware update. Anyway, for steady handheld video footage, I really like it. I didn't spend too much time trying every single AF mode. Because I shoot primarily landscapes and portraits, my needs are relatively small. What emerged is that the X-T4 has a better keeper rate, meaning that focus is faster and more accurate than the previous XT models. But with the latest firmware update, namely the version 4.00, Fujifilm brought the same AF performance of the X-T4 to the X-T3. That's awesome. The X-T30 is slightly slower than the two big sisters, but it shows a mirable AF performance as well. So far, for my experience in landscape, travel and portrait photography, I didn't have any kind of problem with capturing the images I want. Concerning other settings, the X-T4 has a new AF range limiter function that allows you to set a minimum and a maximum focus distance to which the AF motor of the lens can travel. This can be useful for certain applications such as wildlife or when capturing details and you don't want the camera to travel all the way to infinity or vice versa. There is one custom mode plus two presets and it works in continuous AF mode only. Fujifilm is well known for its amazing film simulation. In this regard, Fuji added a few new beautiful film simulation in the X-T4 like the classic negative, the eternal bleach bypass and the lovely black and white acros with the three different filters, the yellow one, the red and the blue. There are also a couple more new functions to customize the tones and colors of the image, the color chrome effect and the color chrome FX blue. The X-T3 and the X-T30 already offer an excellent range of settings to customize the look of your image, but with the extra parameters and profiles brought to the X-T4, you really have all the tools you need to create distinctive straight out of the camera JPEGs. Even though I don't shoot frequently in JPEG, I'm totally in love with the film simulations, so magic. About the raw image quality, I don't have too much to say. I love the Fujifilm RAW files and the color science Fujifilm implemented in his cameras. The sensor of the three cameras is exactly the same, the 26.1 megapixel APS-C X-Trans4 CMOS sensor combined with the X processor for image engine. Same dynamic range, same colors, same contrast, same details, same performances at high ISO. Here a sequence of images I shot with all these three cameras and the quality is exactly the same for each one. Can you tell which camera I used? Fujifilm also added the new compress option for the RAW recording. RAW images are compressed using a lossy non-reversible algorithm. I don't see the point of this new addition since the lossless option is already excellent. The save memory is absolutely negligible. I always loved the video quality on the Fujifilm XT series, actually since the XT2. I used it for some work in the past and even though the quality is not as good as the X-T4 or the X-T3, I got very respectable results. It could record 420 f-log directly to the SD card with an 8-bit depth and 100 megabits per second data rate. I had the opportunity to use it for some video productions. For instance, this is a music video I filmed in F-log mode for my heavy metal band The More for the launch of the album Jupiter's Immigrants. And here another one I created for a wonderful classic music festival in Venice a couple of years ago. And for this production, I used just the Pro Negative standard film simulation profile with just a couple of adjustments on the shadows and highlights. The video specs of the X-T4 match those of the X-T3, giving you some really high-end capture options and excellent image quality. On this camera, you gain the option to record the more web-friendly AAC audio in camera, 8-bit H.264 modes, rather than the linear PCM. These performances are quite different from the little X-T30, but for some work they are more than enough. At this moment I'm filming myself with the X-T4 plus the 1655 using the internal recording on SD, 16:9 4K, 24 frames per second in F-log, 10 bits 420 long GOP at 200 megabits per second. These settings give me good quality for this YouTube production. Then I just apply a custom color grading with DaVinci Resolve. I filmed some short clips not using the F-Log mode but the film simulation on the default settings without any custom adjustment, and some of them are absolutely lovely. My favorites are the Eternal, the Classic Chrome, and also the new Classic Negative, which has a wonderful color flavor. I also tried using the high-speed recording modes in Full HD to see the video quality. Here the footage at 120 frames per second at the native resolution. Then the 240 frames per second version in 4K. The bottom line is that the 240 frames per second gives you a sweet slow motion effect, but the loss of details is severe in comparison to the 120 frames per second. Overall, I've been very impressed with the XT4 footage. The film simulation modes make it easy to shoot footage that needs very little color grading, and 10-bit internal log footage means you can get nicely malleable results if you do plan to do significant color editing, especially with the all-intro settings at 400 megabits per second. Another awesome addition is the View Assist mode that provides a corrected preview when shooting playback F-Log footage. This applies a gamma correction to the EVF and LCD, making it easier to visualize the end result. I really love this new addition. Alright, conclusions. Overall, the XT4 is an amazing camera. The build quality and the ergonomics are fantastic. The design is beautiful and it's a lovely camera to use thanks to the physical controls and customization possibilities. The image quality is also absolutely amazing. It's a joy to edit its raw files, very flexible and with wonderful colors. And finally, the $1 million question: which camera is the best for you? I don't know. It really depends on you and your needs. What I do know is that you can't go wrong with any of these cameras. As for the image and build quality, the reliability, the enjoyment of using each one of them. So you get the idea that all three have several things in common, but on the other hand, they have some crucial differences. Alright, to recap, starting from the little baby XT30, this camera is suitable for a number of photographic activities. Focusing on landscape and travel photography, I think, is an amazing camera to work with great ergonomics, an image quality identical to that of those big sisters XT4 and XT3, and with all the functions you need to capture beautiful landscape images. The smaller body makes it very portable and lightweight. The battery life is decent, but don't mind, you just need a couple of spare batteries and you are in business. For video, I think it works quite well. It's an incredible video camera for the money. It inherits the majority of the video features from the XT3, so unless you are really hardcore, you can save a lot of money by getting the XT30 instead. The lack of an in-body image stabilization limits the number of applications, so unless your lens features the OIS, things may be a bit shaky. One downside is the lack of the weather sealing, so I highly recommend to be careful when you use it in an inclement weather. Bring with you a couple of shower cap just in case. Overall, all these characteristics make the XT30 an ideal companion for landscape and travel photography. Next one, let's move to the XT3. What can I say? 2 years after its launch, the XT3 is still an amazing camera, and arguably one of the best still video cameras on the market. I really love it. Nothing offers this balance of image quality, functionality, and reliability in the market. If you are interested in stills and video, it's a knockout. The lack of stabilization, though, holds the video back a touch, but as a compact, relatively affordable do-everything camera, it's very impressive. With all that said, the XT3 remains a very good all-rounder camera, with a user experience in the field that's absolutely fantastic. And another thing which should be considered is that it continues to receive firmware updates. So if you want a bit more robust, bigger and weather-sealed body with some more advanced video features, giving up the IBIS, and decent money saving compared with the T4, well, the X-T3 is a real bargain. And what about the latest in-home Fujifilm? Finally, the X-T4. This camera is practically an X-T3 under steroids. It's the best of the best for an APS-C camera. The design is beautiful and it's a lovely camera to use thanks to the physical controls and the customization possibilities. Not a huge difference from the X-T3 from a landscape photographer perspective actually, and if you are not into video, I would definitely suggest to skip the X-T4, save money to spend maybe for other gear and go directly with the X-T3. So far I really enjoy the new IBIS, it's powerful and it's very convenient to use in a combination with long telephoto lenses to avoid any vibration while shooting at low shutter speeds. It's also brilliant to be able to film quick steady shots for the behind the scenes of my photography trips and workshop without relying on the tripod or a gimbal and getting wonderful results. As I said, the major benefits of the X-T4 are the image stabilization system that works with any lens, a significant improvement in battery life and the multi-angle LCD screen. You need to figure out if any of these three things are a must-have for your shooting needs, or if you are better off saving some money for an X-T3, which can be found at a discount price. There is still room for improvements, for sure, like the floppy doors to cover the side connectors, the remote release connector in an impractical position, the headphones output jack that could be added back, the camera remote app that's not yet fully optimized, and last but not least, I would like to see some improvements on the video stabilization, maybe with a future firmware update. So if you are a hybrid shooter who loves stills and video and you don't mind spending a little more, the X-T4 is definitely the right choice for you. All the three cameras we discussed here delivered excellent performances. So guys, before to make a decision, ask yourself these questions. What do you like to photograph? And in which weather conditions you find yourself photographing most often? Until now, how many times did you photograph in the rain, strong rain, or in rough weather conditions? What are your minimum requirements? Are you also into video or not? Alright, I hope you found this video useful. Before leaving, what Fujifilm camera are you using and why do you love it? If you have any question about the video, drop me a comment below, I'll be happy to get back to you. As always, thank you for watching. If you are not following me on Instagram, my link is in the description below. If you are interested in joining me on one of my photography workshops, please check out my website. You'll find all the details and the upcoming workshops. Okay, that's it. Have a wonderful day, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao!